Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupada Satara Satasi Simad Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Maharaja Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupada Satara Satasi Simad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaja Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupada Satara Satasi Simad Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Satara Satasi Simad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Asatara Satasi Simad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Sri Rup Sri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Sri Sarup Damodar Roy Ramanandadi Gauda Parishada Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Sila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sige Ho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Govardhan Dwala Smanatmakam Shri Brajamandala Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shamakunda Radhakunda Jamuna Ganga Tulasi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Sudishan Chakraju Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Vigna Vinasana Nishinga Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakta Pravarshi Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai. Charo Sampradaya Charya Ki Jai. Charo Dham Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mata Ki Jai. C.C. Radha Govinda Mandir in Alachua Ki Jai. Harinam Prabhu Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Go Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hari Hari Bol. Hari Hari Bol. Okay. So, we're here to do a class on Srila Haridas Thakur and also Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj, because these are the disappearance days of both of them. And so I'm going to tell a few things about both personalities. First, we'll sing Jaya Radha Madhava. I didn't bring my kartals. Please forgive me. I'm just going to do it without kartals. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Giribharadhari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Giribharadhari. Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Banachari. Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Giribharadhari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Giribharadhari. Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Banachari, Jamunatira Banachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. So, wait a little bit longer or just start? I see two people on. All right. Malika Madhavi Art. Where's Ganesham? Is Ganesham there? Gaurasunder is listening. Where's Suchandra and Chandrakanta? All right. So, we're going to have a talk today, first about Srila Haridas Thakur. Ganesham is sleeping. Wake him up. It says 10 people are on. Okay, I only see 4 people here. Okay. 4 people are on the comments. Nobody else has commented. Okay. So, first I want to talk about the appearance of Haridas Thakur. Lord Brahma was looking at Krishna, baby Krishna, young Krishna, Gopal, in the forest with his friends. They were eating lunch. Krishna was eating off the plate of his cowherd friend. The cowherd friend was eating off of his plate. Krishna was holding food in his left hand. So he thought, this person cannot be Bhagavan. This cannot be the Supreme Lord. There is some confusion here. Because Brahma was covered by some illusory conception. Not that he was in Maya. He is not an illusion like an ordinary living being, but by Yoga Maya's power, in order to reduce his ego, then Sri Krishna arranged for Yoga Maya to cover him and make him think that he was not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Lord Brahma hid all the cows and cowherd boys and calves and cows. He hid them all, the calves and the cowherd boys. And Krishna expanded into all of those calves and cowherd boys in order to fulfill the desires of all the elder gopis and the cows to have Krishna as their son. So what happened was that when he came back after a minute, he saw that all the cowherd boys were there and all the calves were there, and he realized that something was wrong, that it's not possible How could this be? And then Krishna revealed to him how all the different Narayan forms that expanded from him became the different cowherd boys and calves. So seeing this, he realized his offense. And of course, he offered so many beautiful prayers in humility in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto. And then, after that, Lord Brahma was praying inside of himself, thinking, how can I become more humble? And so he was in Antardweep, in Navadweep. He was in the Antardweep island praying that when you come next time as Lord Chaitanya, I want to take birth as a very humble devotee so that I can serve you in humility. And so what happened was, Krishna came to Lord Brahma and told him, yes, you will take birth as a Muslim who is always chanting the holy name. And by this, you will teach everyone how to chant the holy name by your humility and your steadfast actions in reciting the holy name. And so like that, he was able to perform the recitation of the holy name in great humility as Haridas Thakur. Another wonderful thing that Haridas Thakur did was he showed us in humility how to have the highest consciousness when being abused. Abuse is something that we are supposed to learn how to tolerate. Trinadapi sunichena tarodapi sahishnuna. We see in the tale of the Avantipur Brahmin in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, that the Avantipur Brahmin was severely abused by people. And yet he understood that the abuses were not real. The abuses were only imagined. They were in his mind. And so understanding that, he became very humble in his service to Krishna. So Haridas Thakur, he showed us by example how to deal with abuse. When somebody abuses you, we can see from the story of Bhrigu when he committed some offense to Lord Shiva by thoughtlessly not offering any respect to him. So that was an offense by thought. Lord Shiva responded by wanting to kill him. So in the mode of ignorance, the response to abuse is vengeance, retribution. In the mode of passion, when Bhrigu goes to Lord Brahma and he offends him by his words, which is a more serious offense than by thought, then what happens is Lord Brahma scolds him. He gets very angry at him. So in this way, anger is the response from the mode of passion for one being abused. But when Brigamuni goes to see Vishnu and places his foot on Vishnu's chest, Vishnu is very worried. He said, "Oh, great Brahmin, Brigu, your foot must have hurt by placing it on my very hard chest." So even though he kicked the Lord in the chest, the Lord took it that his chest was so hard that it hurt the foot of the Brahmin. So this is a response in the mode of goodness. So Haridas Thakur, he was praying while he was being beaten by the Muslims. He was praying to Lord Chaitanya that please don't come here to punish them. I forgive them. Please understand that I'm forgiving them and I don't want them to get any reaction for their actions. Of course, Srila Gurudev said that they got reaction anyway, but the mood of Haridas Thakur was, don't hurt them, don't punish them, please forgive them. This was his mood. So we have to pray for forgiveness from the abuser. That just the way Vishnu said to Brigamuni, okay, please forgive me, your soft foot must have hurt when it touched my hard chest. Similarly, Haridas Thakur, in the even deeper mood of Shuddha Sattva, Sattva, in the deeper mood of spiritual consciousness, he was saying, oh, please forgive them and don't give them any reaction. So this is the mood of the devotee. This is the mood of the devotee. The devotee has this mood. Complete forgiveness to the abuser. So Haridas Thakur teaches us how to respond on the highest level of response that one can give when being abused. So this is a beautiful pastime of Haridas Thakur. Also, we should understand something about the poem that, well, before I tell that poem, first let me talk about another time when Haridas Thakur was going to the house of Raghunath Das and giving a class about the glories of the holy name. And he explained how the dim reflection of the holy name, Nama Bas, was so powerful that it could give one liberation. And there's a story about this Muslim who was in the forest and he was walking and suddenly he had to he had to go to the toilet. He had to pass stool. And so while trying to pass stool in the forest, a wild boar came and attacked him and pierced him with the tusk. And he was lying on the ground suffering in pain, dying from the pierce of the tusk. And he prayed. He didn't pray, he just shouted out in Arabic, Haram, Haram, Haram. The word Haram in Arabic means abominable, condemned. That this is an abominable, condemnable thing that has happened to me. But it is Ha, Hare, Ram, Rama, Haram. So this was a dim reflection of the chanting of the holy name. And Lord Ram came and gave him liberation and took him to Vaikuntha. All his sins were forgiven. So what we try to understand from all of this is that Haridas Thakur, when he was explaining this, there was one Brahmin in the assembly, his name was Gopal Chakravarti, and he was a Smarta Brahmin. He was not one who was a Vaishnava and who followed the concepts of Vaishnava Dharma. So he didn't believe this conception that was being given by Haridas Thakur that simply by Namabhas you could get liberation. So he shouted at Haridas Thakur that if this is true, then my nose should fall off my face. But if it's not true, your nose should fall off your face. So Raghunath Das' father and uncle, the Majumdars, became very upset, and they fired Gopal Chakravarti, who was their tax collector. And when he left, the next day he got leprosy and his nose fell off of his face. So then Gopal Chakravarti, he realized what a big offense he had committed, and he went to Aparada Bhanjan, where Srila Narayan Maharaj has his temple in Navadvip, and he prayed to Lord Chaitanya for forgiveness, and Lord Chaitanya came and gave him forgiveness and cured him of his leprosy by his continuously chanting the holy name. Then his leprosy was cured and he was restored to his original handsome form, because he was a very handsome man before he got the leprosy. So again, we see Haridas Thakur, he was very humble. He didn't get upset when he was accused by Gopal Chakravarti. He just very humbly accepted the curse of Gopal Chakravarti. So these pastimes all teach us about the deep humility of Haridas Thakur. Also, even in the story of Haridas Thakur with the prostitute, she tried day after day for 3-4 days to seduce him. And he was very humble. He said, "Oh, of course, I will satisfy your desires. But first I have to finish my japa." Great humility. Let me just finish my japa. He wasn't egotistical. "Oh, get out from here. Who are you? I will not submit to you." No. "Oh, yes, I will gladly submit to you, but you please just let me finish my rounds. If I can finish my rounds, then I can satisfy your desires." So she was very happy, thinking that he would do that, but instead, over so many days, she became purified by hearing the pure chanting of the holy name from the lips of a pure sadhu. So like this, even this pastime, this act was pure humility. And this principle of hearing the chanting of the holy name from the lips of the sadhu was celebrated by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in relationship to Haridas Thakur. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a poem about Haridas Thakur. And in the poem there was one quatrain of 4 verses. "He reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die when living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live and live to spread the holy name around. So he was explaining this, and while he was explaining this, we have to understand the deep meaning behind the explanation of this poem. There are certain God brothers and God sisters of mine and other devotees who think that this means that the transcendental sound vibration is there in the tape recorder. That what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, living still in sound, applies to a tape recording. But in fact, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote that poem in 1871. And the first gramophone or machine to record someone's voice wasn't invented until 1877 by Thomas Alva Edison, 6 years later. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his intention in writing the poem, what did he mean, living still in sound? He couldn't be talking about a tape recorder because there was no tape recorder. There was no recording device. Not at the time when he wrote the poem, and not at the time when Haridas Thakur lived. There was no recording device in the 1500s. So what was he explaining? What was it that he was trying to tell us when he says living still in sound? And what he meant is that the transcendental sound vibration emanating from the lips of the sadhu, that this is Haridas Thakur. That Haridas Thakur is speaking that sound vibration, which he heard from the lips of a sadhu. And what his sound vibration was heard by a sadhu that spoke it to another sadhu, that spoke it to another sadhu along the parampara, so that that sound vibration is manifest from the lips of the pure devotee. This is the pure transcendental sound vibration coming from the lips of the pure devotee. This is Haridas Thakur, living still in sound. So we should understand what is the actual position of Haridas Thakur. We should understand the actual situation of what this verse means, this poem means. We should not misunderstand this poem as relating to any mechanical device. Now, I have so many verses in which I could explain this, so many statements by Prabhupada and where he makes it clear, but that's another class for another time. Tonight, we talked so far for a half an hour about Haridas Thakur. Now we want to talk about Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Maharaj. Srila Maharaj was the disciple of Bhakti Daitya Madhav Maharaj, who was a disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada. Srila Madhav Maharaj was the god brother of my guru, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada. And Srila Madhav Maharaj was a very great devotee, great servant of his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Prabhupada. So he attracted many high-class devotees to be his disciples. One of them was Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj. Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Goswami Maharaj was a very, very devoted disciple of his Guru Maharaj. He was born into a very high-class Brahmin family, and he was very devoted to Brahminical behavior. He would never eat or drink anything that did not come from the hands of a Brahmin. When he first went to Gaudiya Math, he wouldn't even drink the water there or eat food or anything because there were many devotees who were cooking and working and offering that were not Brahmins by birth. So Yayavar Maharaj, Srila Bharti Maharaj told me this story. He said Yayavar Maharaj, understanding Srila Bharti Maharaj's nature, there was one brahmachari, his name was Pradumna Mishra, but he was actually a Mishra by birth, means he was a Brahmin by birth. So he used to ask Pradumna Mishra that, can you bring some water for Bharti Maharaj? Can you cook something and offer it for Bharti Maharaj so that he can eat prasadam? And then Bharti Maharaj would accept it because it was prepared and offered by a Brahmin. So very, very humble, very, very dedicated to the principle of his Brahminical culture. And when he came to understand the principles of Vaishnavism more clearly from his Gurudev, and how a Vaishnava is equal to and more than a Brahmin, then he surrendered and took prasadam from everyone. So he had this, that was a great act of humility on his part to transcend his high birth in a very high-class Brahmin family. You saw that his complexion was very fair. So this is usually the indication of someone born in a high-class Brahmin family to have a very fair complexion. So then Srila Bharti Maharaj, he was given responsibility because he was very educated. Srila Bhakti Daitya Madhav Maharaj used to engage him in the service of some of his godbrothers because he was very educated and he could write very nicely in good handwriting. And so Srila Bharti Maharaj was once engaged in the service of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Goswami Maharaj. There was a court case in which Bhakti Vilas Tirtha from the Chaitanya Math wanted to remove the fruit trees and the orchards and the gardens and things which Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Maharaj had cultivated for Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta. So rather than allowing them to do that, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Maharaj took them to court to fight it. So in making his presentation in court, he had to give all the arguments. And so he spoke the arguments to Srila Bhakti Vigyan Bharti Maharaj, and Bharti Maharaj, with his excellent knowledge of the English language and his excellent ability to write by hand and his handwriting, and also his knowledge of the Bengali language, it may very well be that the court was conducted in Bengali, not English, but it may have been in English because it was the British uh, system of justice. So they may have conducted all the events in the English language. At any rate, I don't remember or recall for sure whether it was English or Bengali, but he knew how to write very well, and he received all the oral arguments of Srila Bhakti Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj, and then Srila Bharti Maharaj wrote out all the oral arguments in longhand on the papers so that they could be presented in court. Now, when the court case came of who was going to take control of the Sri Chaitanya Mat, Bhakti Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj lost. Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj won the court case that he was in charge of the Mat. But he wrote on a piece of paper, on a document, a court document, he acquiesced and said, I will never tear down the fruit orchards, I will never tear down the vegetable gardens, I will never tear down the rice fields. Whatever was cultivated by Bhakti Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj, I will leave it. And so, originally Bharti Maharaj said to him, he said, you lost the case. And Srila Keshava Maharaj said, no, I didn't lose the case. I won the case because now they have promised in court, on court documents, that they will never take down those fruit orchards and vegetable fields and rice fields that I grew for Srila Prabhupada. So, therefore, if in the future they ever try to do it, I have the documentation now to stop them from tearing down the fruit orchards. And so this service was rendered to Srila Bhakti Bhagwan Keshav Maharaj by Srila Bharti Maharaj when he was a young man. And he got to serve also Pramod Puri Maharaj. Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj one time got a temple donated to him in Bengal, in Khulna, I think it was. And Srila Bharti Maharaj and some other brahmacharis came to help Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj with a festival for opening the temple. So when they came there, they went to see Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj, and Srila Bharti Maharaj said to him, there's no utensils for cooking, and there's no utensils for serving prasadam. We have nothing, no plates, no forks, no spoons, no cooking vessels, no serving vessels. We don't have anything. Now, how are we going to be able to put on a feast for the grand opening of the temple without any of the instruments required? And so Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj instructed Bhakti Bhagwan Bharti Maharaj that you go and see this personality here. He is a local magistrate or manager in this area, and he'll help you. So they went to see him, and they told him that Pramod Puri Maharaj had sent him and that they needed utensils, and he took them in the back to a big facility that they had, which they call a go-down in India. It means a storage unit, big storage unit. And so in there, they had pots They had cooking utensils. They had serving buckets and serving pitchers. And they had plates and spoons and glasses and cups. They had everything that was necessary to put on the feast. And he told them, you please take whatever you want, put it on the lorry, and take it with you. So he supplied them everything that they needed, and they brought it. So in this way, Srila Bharti Maharaj served Srila Pramod Puri Maharaj as well. He once asked me, Srila Bharti Maharaj, he said, about the different disciples of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And I said, yes, I met Ban Maharaj, I met Srila, your Guru Maharaj, Srila Madhav Maharaj, Srila Puri Maharaj, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. I met all these personalities. He said, yes, you met them, but it was my fortune to serve them. So he was making me understand that just meeting them was nice, but serving them, this was a greater accomplishment, that one should render service. And that by rendering service to the great personalities, you get so many benefits. And so in this way, they received, Srila Bharti Maharaj received so many blessings from all the disciples of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. And his Guru Maharaj entrusted him, Bhakti Daitya Madhav Maharaj entrusted him with great responsibilities to build all the new temples. He built the temple in Jagannath Puri. He built the temple in Chandigarh. He built all the different temples throughout India for his Guru Maharaj. And there's some interesting pastimes that took place during that period. One of the pastimes was that they have a principle. They have a principle in Gaudiya Math that when the trucks come with the cement and the bricks and everything, that the brahmacharis are the ones who carry the bricks and the cement from the trucks to the construction site on the property so that the workers can then build the temple building. So they have this motto, who carried the bricks? Those who carried the bricks get a place in the mutt because they did the work to build the mutt. So in this regard, when Srila Bharti Maharaj was supervising the movements of the different things, the bricks and the cement, there was a bag of cement. They were like tossing the bag of cement from one to the other so that it could go along faster. There was a line. And Srila Bharti Maharaj saw that one brahmachari was not being attentive when the bag of cement was being tossed, and he was about to get hit with the bag of cement and suffered badly. So Srila Bharti Maharaj put his own body in the way, and he took the hit with the bag of cement on his back, and it caused sciatic pain in his lower back, which he suffered with throughout his whole life. So this was the kind of devotion that Srila Bharti Maharaj had to his men in order to serve his men and take care of his men. Also, Srila Bharti Maharaj told me a story because in 1979, some of my god siblings came to visit me in Bhubaneswar, and I brought them to Puri, and he had a camera and he took a photograph of the birth room of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because the building in Puri used to be the house of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And so then Bhakti Daityamata Maharaj bought that building and he wanted to turn it into a temple. So I was requesting them to keep the birth room of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur intact. If I had thought about it now, if I had thought about it then the way I think about it now, I would have had them at least save some of the bricks. Because if they had saved the bricks that were part of the room, those bricks could have been sold for donations to help build the temple. But people at that time, I didn't think about that and they didn't understand that either. So what happened was that Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharti Maharaj told me, I told him that I had this picture and he asked me if I could get him a copy of the picture. And so I made a special copy of the picture, a large copy of the picture, and I got a gold frame for it and I gave it to him as a gift. There's a picture of me giving him the picture as a gift. And when I did that, he said, I want to tell you a story. He said, when we took down Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's birth room, he said the ground underneath the birth room was so fragrant that it permeated the whole property everywhere. You could smell this divine, heavenly fragrance. He said, and then we realized that the temple has to be built on top of this land. And so they had a different arrangement of where the temple would be and where the guest house would be. They changed the whole thing around. Where you see the temple today in Jagannath Puri at Bharti Maharaj's, at that mutt, that Gaudiya mutt, where you see the temple today, you'll see that first is, if you're facing the deities, the Radha Krishna deities are in the center. The Jagannath deities are on the to the right of Krishna, and to the left of Krishna is Radharani, of course, but then the next section over is a murti of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada sitting on a Vyasasana. And that section of the altar is directly over the birth room of Srila Saraswati Thakur. So, very great, very, very great, very powerful, very wonderful. And also, Srila Bharti Maharaj told a story one time. There was a man who met with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And when he met with him, he was a great Pandit himself. I think his name was Madan Mohan Malavya. So when he met with Srila Saraswati Thakur asked him, if there was going to be a flood and you could save one book, which book would you save? So initially he said Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and he gave his reasons. There's a section in the Puranas about why the Gita is the one scripture. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, no, not the Gita. So he said, well, then Srimad Bhagavatam, and he gave the verses from the Bhagavatam, how it was the spotless Purana and that it was the highest literature. And then Srila Saraswati Thakur said, no, not the Bhagavatam. So then Madan Mohan Malavya said, well, I don't know after that. I don't know. So then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said Chaitanya Charitamrita, because within that book, everything is there. Everything is there. And so he explained the importance of that to Madam Mahamalevya. And then Srila Bharti Maharaj went to visit that man, and that man told him the story. And Srila Bharti Maharaj said, having heard this story from him, I could understand that the Chaitanya Charitamrita was the most superior scripture, but I hadn't realized it. And Srila Bharti Maharaj said later, hearing the Hari Katha of Chaitanya Charitamrita from the sadhus, then I could understand the glories of Chaitanya Charitamrita by hearing this Hari Katha from the lips of the sadhus about the glories of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then he said, his Guru Maharaj gave him the responsibility to translate the Chaitanya Charitamrita from Bengali into Hindi. And so he was working on the translation of the Chaitanya Charitamrita from Bengali to Hindi. And he said, at that time, when I went over the word for word explanations of the Bengali words in the verses and translated each Bengali word into Hindi and measured the meaning and importance of each and every word in the verse and read the purport, translated the purports of Srila Saraswati Thakur, he said, and then hearing, seeing, learning all of that, explaining it in the Hindi language, he said, then I could understand. I could realize, I could actually realize the glories of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is example of what Srila Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, sixth verse. He says, hearing and explaining the revealed scriptures is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. So Srila Bharti Maharaj showed us by his life's example that his realization of the Chaitanya Charitamrita came not just by hearing the story, not just by hearing the sweet Hari Katha from the lips of the sadhus, but by explaining it in the Hindi language so that other people could read and benefit by it. This combination, hearing and explaining, this is the key. The two things have to be there. Srila Bharti Maharaj had a very wonderful way, and he told me, when I first met him, I asked him, not first, but I knew him from when I was 26, 27 years old in India. But when I first reintroduced myself to him in 2011, I went to see him and I asked him that, do you preach from Gita? He said, no, I don't preach from Gita. I said, how come? And he said, because Gita can be misinterpreted in so many different ways. It's easy to twist the meanings. I said, so what is it that you preach from on a regular basis? He said, Rupa and Sanatan Shiksha from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this was his main preaching work, preaching about Rupa and Sanatan Shiksha. So he heard the story, He heard the Hari Katha from the lips of the sadhus. He explained it in the Hindi language, word for word. And then he used to preach about it on a regular basis. So in this way, he completely realized the depths of Chaitanya Charitamrita 100%. And Srila Bharti Maharaj he was very, very kind, very generous personality with his time and with his answering questions. He would meet with the devotees during Kartik. We would come to hear him preach in Kartik, and we went three Kartiks, and I also spent one Purushottam Mas with him, all in Chandigarh. And when I came there and I was with him and I heard him speak, I noticed that he was speaking about Gajendra Leela during Kartik. Now, Gajendra Leela is about completely surrendering to the Lord, and so this was the Hari Katha that he was giving throughout Kartik about complete surrender to the Lord, complete submission. Now, during that Kartik months, they would take the 8, every 3 hours, there is a pastime of the Lord that is being performed, starting with the early morning hours into the late night, coming all the way around. So 3 8s are 24. Within the 24-hour period, there are 8 pastimes. And during those pastimes, during the Kartik month, the devotees would sing the prayers by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur about the different pastimes at each juncture, in the early morning, before Mangalarti, and then before Guru Puja, and then in the mid-morning, and then at noon, like this. And Srila Bharti Maharaj, although he was preaching this very foundational katha of complete surrender about Gajendra during the month of Kartik, whenever they would ask him to speak about this, the pastime that was being discussed at that particular time, then he would start speaking about this Hari Katha in a very sweet way, so reminiscent of the way Srila Gurudev would talk about the conjugal pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a very loving and tender manner. And we see a completely different side of him during that period. Very amazing. And Srila Bharti Maharaj also, the way he would lecture was very unusual, the way he would answer a question. I remember asking him the question, he's explaining it to me in English, and he starts out answering the question, and then he says, "This brings me to a story." And then he starts telling the story. I'm thinking, this story has nothing to do with the question. And then he goes to another seat. From that story, he's saying, and that reminds me of another story. And he starts going to that story. And then and also this story, another story. So like this, he kept going from one story to the other. And while he was going from one story to the other, at the end, suddenly he came back to the original discussion that he was talking about at the very beginning before he started telling all the stories. And then he showed the thread of how each story was connected to to the original point of my question. And then he answered the question. And I was completely astonished. I said, I've never heard anyone speak Harikatha like this. Srila Prabhupada spoke in a very linear Western way. Srila Bharti Maharaj was more oriental in his expression, going in a big circle and coming back to the same point. So very, very interesting the way he explained the Katha. And Srila Bharti Maharaj, one day when I was with him, he came up to me and he looked me in the eye and he said, if a small child wants to put his hand in the fire, will the father let him put the hand in the fire? I said, no, of course not. Supposing the child is stamping his feet and complaining, I want to put my hand in the fire. Will the father allow him? I said, no, the father can't allow him to put his hand in the fire and burn his hand. So he said, similarly, once you surrender to Krishna, he won't let you go. No matter how much you complain or stamp or your feet or cry that you want to be let go, he won't let go of you. He'll keep you. And then I understood the depths of what he was trying to communicate to me. The power of Krishna's love for the jiva. So deep, so deep. And then Srila Bharti Maharaj, he was telling me one time we were in Vrindavan. I came to visit him. I wasn't staying with him in Vrindavan. I was staying somewhere else, but I came to see him in the Gopinath Bhavan. And when I came in there to see him, he asked me, he said, there's one devotee, one of your godbrothers. Do you know him? I said, yes, I know this devotee you're talking about. He said, this devotee wants to take sannyas. He asked me to give him sannyas. I said, I know. He told me that he was going to ask you. And then he said, many people are coming here, and some people are advocating that he should be given sannyas, and some people are saying that I should not give him sannyas. I said, yes, it's very controversial. So he said, I don't know any of these people, but I know you. I know you for 40 years. I trust you. If you tell me to give this man sannyas, I'll give him sannyas. And if you tell me not to give him sannyas, then I won't give him sannyas. So I knew that if he gave sannyas to this man, that because this man had committed some child abuse when he was younger, he had abused some children, that it would be very controversial and many people would criticize Srila Bharti Maharaj for giving him sannyas. And I didn't want anyone to criticize Srila Bharti Maharaj because I loved him so much. So I told him that Srila Bharti Maharaj, I advise you not to give this man sannyas because it will not reflect well on you. People will have a poor opinion of your grace, and I could not tolerate seeing people speak badly about you, and so therefore I'm requesting you that you please don't give this man sannyas. He said, okay, if you tell me not to give him sannyas, I won't give him. And so Srila Bharti Maharaj, he was so kind to me. He showed me so much love, so much affection, so much care. I remember one time I went to the market to purchase some vegetables, and I came back, and when I came back, he had come down for his afternoon. He would come down every morning around 10 and every afternoon about 5, and he would sit in the chair. They had a big office chair with a big high back. He would sit in the chair and he would give darshan and answer questions. That same chair was used in the temple at night for him to give lectures. And so what happened was they hadn't brought the chair from the temple room to the location on the veranda where he usually sits in the afternoon to give darshan. And so I walked in from outside. I walked into the temple compound and I walked through into the back. And when I got to the back to the veranda, Srila Bharti Maharaj walked in to the veranda and he stood in the place where he usually sits down and gives his darshan, and he stood there. There was no chair for him to sit on and no cushion for his feet. So when I saw that he was standing there, I just dropped the bags of vegetables in my hand and I ran into the temple room like a little boy, young man. Suddenly I had all this energy. And I ran into the temple room and I got the chair and I got the cushion and I carried it, rolled it out and brought it to him and let him sit down in the chair, and then I took his shoes off and I put his feet on the cushion. He didn't say anything. He didn't make any verbal or physical recognition. But for the rest of that day and night, I felt such an ecstatic feeling in my heart. He had given me a blessing, recognizing my desire to perform service without any false ego, just to give him some service, just to please him. So recognizing my service to him, he gave me such a blessing of ecstasy in my heart. So I had these very intimate moments with Srila Bharti Maharaj, very, very intimate moments with him. He was such a loving, kind person. And I used to sit with him when he would give darshan to the devotees. And I remembered reading in one of the newsletters that the devotee who used to write the newsletter explained that Srila Bharti Maharaj, sometimes he gets a headache from speaking English too long because it was not his first language. And so I would sit with him and he would be answering questions and he would be explaining things in the English language to the devotees. And while he was explaining things in the English language to the devotees, sometimes he would stop. After speaking for half an hour, 40 minutes, he would stop and I would see he would be staring out into the atmosphere and he would be trying to reach for the word. He couldn't remember the word, and I knew he's getting a headache now. By trying to reach for these words in English, he's getting a headache. So then I would put my hand on his arm and I'd say, Srila Maharaj, I think maybe now you're searching for those words. You must be tired. It's time we stop and let you rest a little bit before the class tonight. I think you've spoken long enough in English. And he would very humbly and very slow, oh, yes, okay. And then he would stop speaking, and then I would escort him to his room, and I would get to lay him down in the bed, and sometimes I would get to massage his feet. I had so much mercy from him, so much mercy from him. He allowed me to do so much intimate service. So these are some of the pastimes I had with Srila Bharti Maharaj. He was very kind and merciful to me. He gave me so much love and affection. And I feel very fortunate to have had his mercy in my lifetime. So now it is 8:20 here. I'm getting a little late. It's time for me to wrap up. I'm just going to sing a little bit of Hare Krishna at the end here. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Champak, please keep going. I'm getting a little tired, but I'll try to tell one more story. So, when Srila Bharti Maharaj was talking with the devotees, he would answer many different questions. And this story is a very significant story. I should tell this story. His love and devotion for his servants was very great. Very, very great. He had this one servant who used to take care of him, Narottam, who was gradually going blind. And so, to make sure that Bharti Maharaj was okay, Narottam used to do everything for Srila Bharti Maharaj. So one time, Narottam got sick and they had to take him to the hospital. And at that time, the other servants were not there. Nobody was there. I was the only one who was there. And so I went to his room. He came out of his room. He said, where is Narottam? I said, I don't know. Srila Bharti Maharaj, I don't know. He said he had to go to the hospital. He's sick. So I said, all right, let's go out and sit there. So we went out, He said, I have to sit here and wait for him. He was waiting way past his lunchtime and his nap time. I said, Srila Maharaj, I said, really, you should go back to your room and rest. No, no, I can't go back to my room. I can't rest until I know about Narottam, how Narottam is, whether he's okay or not. And so he sat there in the chair for a long time until the middle of the afternoon practically. And then the car came back and Narottam was not in the car. They kept him at the hospital for observation. Srila Bharti Maharaj was so unhappy that why Narottam is not here, he's not well, oh, he has to stay at the hospital, this is not good. He was very, very distressed that his servant was in this condition. So I said, okay, let's go back to your room. Do you want to talk to Damodar Maharaj? He said, yes. How can I talk to Damodar Maharaj? I said, I'll call him on my phone and you can talk to him. He said, okay. So then I took him into the room and I sat him down and I called Damodar Maharaj and put him on the speakerphone. And then the two of them talked in Hindi. So then he was very, very happy to be able to talk to Damodar Maharaj in Hindi and discuss the situation with Narottam and discuss everything. And Damodar Maharaj knew just the words to say to him to relax him and to make him feel peaceful. And so then Bharti Maharaj said, okay. He said, now I can rest and then later I'll eat my prasadam. So I said, okay. So then I made everyone go out of the room and then I laid him down in the bed so that he could rest. I massaged his feet a little bit, but the problem was I knew that someone had to stand at the door, otherwise people would come in. And so then I left the room, I closed the door, and I sat out in front of the door. And surely enough, a whole bunch of Indian people came and said, oh, we're going to see Bharti Maharaj. I said, no, you're not. You're not going in there. No, we have to go. I'm his friend. And so I said, look, no one's going in there. He didn't get rest. He's resting now. You got to stop. You can't go in there. And so I stopped everybody from going in. And the brahmacharis were very happy that I did this. And so they brought me mahaprasadam from the plate so I could eat my lunch. They brought me dal and sabji and rice and everything. And so Srila Bharti Maharaj, he always was very, very aware and very, very careful to make sure that all the devotees had their needs met. Very, very concerned about the welfare of the devotees under his care. And so like this, I was very, very fortunate to be one of those devotees to some extent or another, and that I was able to offer some service to him, some personal service, some practical service, escorting him to his room and back to the gate, to the veranda in the evening, so he could talk. Sometimes I would escort him from his seat at the lecture back to the room. Like this, I would be with him, and he would give me opportunity. He knew how fallen I was and how much I needed his service. And so like this, he was so kind and generous with me that he would give me some opportunity to serve him in this way. All right, I humbly beg everyone to please forgive me. It's 8:30 now, and this old man is tired. Thank you very much. I appreciate your kind words in the chat, and I hope you enjoy this lecture. Will be on the lecture will be on the Facebook page. You can go and listen to it at another time. Srila Bharti Maharaj Disappearance Day Ki Jai. Srila Haridas Thakur Disappearance Day Ki Jai. Param Vaishnavas Disappearance Day Ki Jai. Go Premanande. Hari Hari Bo. Hari Hari Bo.